Good afternoon. Welcome back. We are going to just give a couple of seconds for some more folks to join us, and we will begin this session. All right, good afternoon. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to be the moderator for this session, and we'll help out with the questions that I'm sure you all will have. I would really like for you to use the Q&A feature versus the chat feature for our session. That will be a little bit easier for me to monitor. We are so thrilled today to have Ingrid Watkins with us to bring you this particular session. Ingrid is the President and Chief Diversity Strategist of IW Consulting Group. She is a passionate and accomplished leader in supplier diversity and business development. In 2017, Ingrid decided to put her passion and expertise to work for our broader business community and launched IW Consulting Group. We are so pleased that she could join us at this year's conference and share her wisdom and expertise on developing a supplier diversity strategic plan. Welcome, Ingrid.
Thank you so much, Carla. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I hope everyone is enjoying your conference. I was looking at the agenda and I was like, wow, I even love the power of influence, the name itself. So how exciting.
Yes, we're going to turn it all over to you. Let me get it in presentation mode here.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. So we'll go ahead and get started. We have a lot to cover, and I want to make sure that everyone have an opportunity at the end to ask questions and be able to get your questions answered. And there may be some points during the presentation that we may stop and take some questions. And please excuse my voice. I have been training for the last 3 days. So I might be a little hoarse, but we're going to make it through. So today we're going to be talking about how to write a supplier diversity strategic plan. And the reason why this topic was so interesting to me is because I'm a firm believer that supplier diversity is one of those initiatives within an organization is critically important. The impact is critically important to diverse communities. And it's important that we kind of move it along from being a program to a strategy. So we're really trying to create an environment in our organizations where it's seen as part of a business strategy versus a program. And we're going to talk a little bit about that later on. So let's look at the agenda. We're going to talk about the elements of a strategic plan and how to apply them in our supplier diversity plan. The supplier diversity program components as we see them and how they interrelate with supplier diversity strategic plan, how to write a strategic plan, how to pivot our program, supplier diversity initiatives from program to strategy. And then we're going to take a look, it's kind of a fun exercise. We're going to take a look at some actual corporate supplier diversity strategic plans that I received from some supplier diversity practitioners. So it'll be fun to take a look and see what others are doing and how they're positioning their strategic plans. Okay, next slide. I'm kind of a quote person. I like to always go online and see quotes. And I thought this is very relevant for today. Our goals can only be reached through the vehicle of a plan. There is no route, no other route to success. I really like that, and I thought it was relevant. So let's talk about writing a strategic plan, how to write a plan, and also how to navigate through the work using our strategic plan, and how it's relevant to help us to reach our goals. Okay. We all have so much work to do, but your approach to the work and having a good plan can really make the difference in terms of how you achieve your goals. So the plan we're going to be talking about today is not much different from, say, your personal performance plan. If you're in an organization that has the annual reviews, this is very similar, but we're actually going to take those same principles and relate them to a program plan. So let's look at the elements, the key elements of a strategic plan. So first you want to define your mission. That is, define your outcomes. What is it that you want this plan to help you to achieve in terms of outcomes? Then we want to look at objectives. Explain objectives that support your mission. These objectives will eventually become your priorities for your plan terms. I've seen plan terms be 1 year, 2 year. I've even worked with clients who come up with 5-year strategic plans. So these will be the things you focus on, the items that you support with resources. These will be your objectives for the plan term. Then we want to define your action items. These are the specific things that you will perform, or possibly your team will perform, to make sure that you achieve your objectives. And also, I really think these should be time dated with a time completion expectation, but not all plans do. So we're trying to set a standard here. So we're going to try to include all of the elements so that the plans help you in a very robust way. Measurements. Define how you will measure success. Different people measure success different ways. Sometimes it's about completing your objective all the way through, and sometimes it's about making a good effort. So know going into your plan how you're going to measure your success. And this last one is really key. When we're talking about moving from a program to a strategy, alignment with your organization's leadership, alignment with your organization's top priorities, really key. I say this all the time to clients: no supplier diversity program can be successful as a silo. It has to be in the inside of the priority bubble. If it's seen as an outside initiative, as it's seen as something that's not a priority, then there's a chance that you risk, not being successful with your objectives. So let's talk a little bit about the strategic plan elements. So program management really requires leaders to be strategic thinkers. I think we're still on the elements. Go back one. Okay, strategic thinkers rather than tactical performers. And I really want you to start thinking strategy, not so much completing tasks that we've probably been completing for a while. Let's think how we can elevate our programs. How can we improve upon some of the things that we've been doing? And that requires good, solid strategy. So if you're going to be an effective program manager, meaning one who achieves and even exceeds goals, you need to be a good planner, a good leader, and a good goal setter. So your strategic plan is not just something that your boss will review to keep you honest. It really can be a guidebook for you to keep you on task and to make sure that you accomplish your goals. So when we look at the objectives, I always say choose 3 to 5 primary objectives. Take small bites. Don't try to overcommit. Your objectives line shouldn't be, 10 things. Even though you may achieve more than the 3 to 5, these are the things you're saying to your leadership that you would like to be held accountable for. So make sure they're impactful things. But like I said, take small bites. 3 to 5 is an honest showing in terms of an objective. Now they have to be impactful. Now this is not about rearranging a file cabinet. They really have to roll up to your organization's hierarchy or leadership's priorities. And keep it simple. Make sure that it's significant work, but keep it simple. I mean, I've seen strategic plans that can be 30 pages long. Lots of times you get lost in all of the content and the text. So be clear, keep it simple, but make it impactful. So one of the things I want to show here in terms of alignment, supplier diversity really, it really needs to be elevated to a leadership objective. It needs to be elevated to a strategic level. And to do that, interacting with your organization leadership, interacting with those decision makers is how you raise your program up. We're going to talk a little bit more about how to communicate and how to get the attention of your leadership a little bit later. So let's move on to the next slide. And I apologize. I have some very creative interns in my practice, but they really seem to like the color green. So all of my slides are various colors of green for some reason. So what we did here is we took the cylinder to show how the strategic plan glides up and down the cylinder. So you're going to start with your leadership organization strategic plan. That's generally coming from your CEO. It may be come from some other higher executive, but this is what leadership tells the organizations. This is what is important to us. This is what we're going to be focusing on. This is where we're going to be allocating our resources. These things are important to the organization. And your strategic plan should be aligned to those priorities, okay? So look at the overarching strategic plan, and let's look at the mission. That's the next line. When you're creating your strategic plan, you're going to just, not the next slide, the next line on the mission, on the cylinder. Okay, yeah, okay. So your mission is just a drop down from your leadership's organization strategic plan. This is where you're reverting to them what they say the priorities are. So your leadership priorities is going to also become your mission, okay? So we're going to look for those overarching leadership strategies, and we're going to do a deep dive into what we can do to support it, how it impacts our organization, how it impacts the work that we do, but alignment is key. So once we develop our mission statement, we're going to look at our objectives and also individual or team action items to support those objectives or to make sure that we achieve those objectives. So let's go to the next slide. So let's just say you are a program coordinator and your chief executive officer sends out this memo, and this is a memo outlining what the leadership priorities are for, or the strategic plan for 2021. So he says, the agency will increase spend with MBEs by 20% and increase spend with WBEs by 10% across all agency affiliates. We want to integrate diversity and inclusion into our internal procurement process or purchasing process, and we want to improve agency engagement with the local communities. Our MWBE coordinator is responsible for ensuring these targets are met by the end of fiscal year 2021. So before you start running around in a panic or typing up your resignation letter, what should be your first plan of action when you see this type of directive or mandate from your executive? I say assess, 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 assess. Next slide. So what are our goals? We already know that because our chief executive officer has laid out some pretty specific goals and pretty detailed goals. So we know goals, so that box is checked. Where are we now? How far are we from that goal? What are our gaps? What actions do we need to take to reach those goals? What can I personally control in terms of getting these goals accomplished? And who are my interdependencies? Who do I need to depend on to help me? And who else is going to be accountable for helping me to reach these goals? Like I said before, no effective program can thrive as a silo. You must manage these internal relationships or interdependencies that you need to support the work. So we need to fill in the gaps. This supplier diversity strategic planning is all about assessing, knowing where you are, where you need to go, and who you need to pull in or engage to get those goals reached and to accomplish your goals. Next slide. So what we did here, my team and I, we are corporate supplier diversity practitioners who've left the corporate. Some are in their own consulting. So we did a brainstorm, an ideation project one day where we listed everything we did as supplier diversity managers and practitioners. And we compartmentalized all of these action items, all of these bits and pieces, which were, I tell you, massive. All of our notes filled up an entire conference room. And we put them in these nice buckets, which made them a little bit more palatable. You can chew off these small buckets rather than literally hundreds of action items and activities that supplier diversity practitioners do. It was quite massive. So if you look at the components, there are 4 buckets. Everything that we have to accomplish in the supplier diversity arena are inside of these 4 buckets. Let's look at data. So you look at data analytics, the reporting, target setting, your growth strategies around data are all included in that one bucket. Then we move on to internal stakeholder management. That's your, how you engage your internal stakeholders. That's your policy, that's your procurement integration, that's all of your interdependencies and the people you rely on to help you to push the initiative internally. That's your training, your communication plan, everything that you touch inside of your organization is inside that internal stakeholder bucket. Then we look at external relationships. That's how you reach out to the diverse supplier community. That's how you navigate your agency partners, how you navigate those best fit engagements, where you position your agency or your organization in the diverse communities. So all of these pieces or components that we know are all part of or make up a supplier diversity program. So we want to identify the value add and the best practices for supplier diversity program and how it relates to putting together a strategic plan. Your strategic plan should include an objective for all of these components. If you're putting together a plan and it's void of data, it may be lacking. If you're putting together a plan and it's void of your internal stakeholder management, it may be lacking. If your supplier diversity program plan does not include internal relationship management, it may be lacking. We're not going to really address second tier program because I'm not sure all of you have that, but in a corporate environment, of course, second tier program is included. Okay. The next slide. Next slide. You're having trouble with the next slide. Next slide, please, Carla.
Hold on just a second.
Okay.
I
I
didn't
wasn't
want
sure
to
you
move.
did.
In the meantime, I do have a question if
Okay.
I can go ahead.
Sure.
The question is, why is it important to move from a program to a strategy? And in your experience, how does this change the game?
Well, I'll tell you, I think I had some notes to talk about that later. So programs, I think when you're a program, it renders you vulnerable for, particularly in a corporate environment, vulnerable for whatever is going on in the corporate climate. Strategies are a little less, little more difficult to move about. Strategies are generally embedded, they're tightly embedded into the corporate priorities. Programs, they can be, they tend to experience budget cuts, they tend to experience complement cuts. So programs generally are a lot more vulnerable to change than corporate strategies. Strategies usually have long-term appeal. They have long-term sustainability. Programs are generally looked at on the short term. So yeah, I just think the vulnerability of programs versus strategy, particularly in a corporate environment, just renders you vulnerable. Yeah. You're susceptible to quite a bit of change.
Thank you. Get back to the slide that we're supposed to be on here.
Yes, we're on.
I had to go out and come back in. I apologize.
That's okay.
Let's see. We were here.
Yep. The next one,
You
the
want to be
highlighted
here.
letter.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Thank you.
So here we're going to scrutinize our Chief Executive Officer's strategic plan a little bit. He has given our MWBE coordinator her marching orders. So let's just kind of debunk the letter. So we know that there's an increase of spend. Remember the supplier diversity program components? So that increase of spend, it addresses that data management piece. We need to try to increase MWBE spend by 20% and WBE spend by 10. So let's put a pin in that, the spend bucket. So then he says, across all agency affiliates, we want to integrate diversity and inclusion into our internal purchasing process. So where do you think that internal relationship management piece, where does that go? That's bucket 2, internal stakeholder management, because in order to achieve that goal, you're going to have to engage those internal purchasing coordinators, your internal purchasing managers. There's going to be some change management and training. There's going to have to be some meetings and some meetings of the minds around what needs to be done. So now we have included 2 of our supplier diversity program buckets. We need to look at the data, and we need to look at our internal stakeholder management. Then our CEO adds a 3rd objective, which is to improve the agency engagement in the local diverse communities. So that goes into the external management bucket. So our Chief Executive Officer has pretty much laid out the components of our supplier diversity plan. So we have to touch all of those buckets in some impactful way. So when you think about building strategy, this is where you sit down and really think about where we are now where do we need to go, and what actions do I need to take as leader of this project or these objectives, or someone who's accountable for these objectives? What do I need to take to make sure we can meet these goals? So let's go to the next slide. So when I'm working with clients in terms of creating strategic plans, we always have an ideation session, or I say brainstorming, where we kind of work through the ideas, work through the plan before we actually start, throwing our plan in the plan format. We want to make sure that we think strategically about what needs to be done. So how will we increase these spend for these groups? How will we accomplish this goal? So let's look at the data. One of the things I came up with, the approaches that I came up with, is I might want to identify all the active MWBE suppliers and maybe validate that spend. And the reason I want to do that is, I mean, if I'm accountable for a 20% increase, I really need to know where we are now. What's that baseline? Where are we starting from? When I add 20%, where am I going to end up? So I need to really do some data analytics around the spend to find out where we are now, and even if this is an achievable goal. And we want to calculate that additional 20% to really get an idea of what our objectives looks like in terms of actual spend. And this is all a part of creating our strategy, okay? So then for the internal piece, when our CEO asks us to, kind of lead the charge for our internal purchasing process, he wants to make sure that diverse suppliers are included in all of the purchasing across a multi-agency organization. How do you get that done? How do I achieve that? So my idea as the MWBE coordinators, I need to create some type of communication cadence. I need to be able to communicate with these people in terms of communicating the CEO's strategy, training them and getting them on board, even getting having an avenue for an exchange of ideas. I can't do it all by myself. So I need these interdependencies. How am I going to engage these purchasing managers? So I might come up with a communication plan that maybe we have a monthly WebEx and we open communication channels, because we're going to have to, communicate, we're going to have to train, we're going to have to strategize together. So if it's your job to rally the troops, think about how you're going to do that. How are you going to pull these people together, get them on board, and get them to feed into your mission, which is to grow that spend and integrate supplier diversity across the purchasing channels. Then next, we have that third objective that our CEOs wants us to accomplish, which is to improve the agency engagement with local diverse communities. How are you going to achieve this? Identify local diversity organizations to engage, to partner with, for connections to the local business communities. You want to identify opportunities for the local business connections. You want to host maybe a networking event and bring the local community in to talk about opportunities. So there's just a number of things that you can do to engage the local community. I would say reach out to organizations that already exist and have relationships with diverse communities, like the Chamber of Commerce or some of the other advocacy groups. So thinking your actions through and how best to approach your directive from your CEO. This is what strategy and planning is all about. Okay. So we're going to move on to the next slide, what I've done here is had some supplier diversity practitioners actually send me their strategic plan. So we want to take a look at this to see what other people are doing. I thought these were really interesting. So in this particular agency, the directive or the mission, I'm pretty sure this came from someone high up in the organization, maybe a CEO or CPO, but the directive is to increase, pretty much like our example, MWBE contracting for the fiscal year 2021, 10% for minorities, 6% for women, 5% for veterans. So this supplier diversity practitioner, who is a real person, says my objective is to identify diverse suppliers currently under contract. Well, that's good. Assess their capability and capacity and seek opportunity to increase contract value. That is a very good approach, actually, to growth spend, because you want to start with your existing suppliers. Whenever your objective is to grow, you want to start right close to where you can actually touch and make impact. Think what's low hanging fruit? Where can I actually make impact without too much disruption, without too much change? So this is actually a good objective to start with your current suppliers, assess their capabilities. Can we increase their contract value? Is there anything else that they can do with their capacity and with their scale? How can we grow these existing suppliers? Very good strategy. Then her action items are to extract diverse suppliers from vendor data and create documents of current contract information and capability. Okay, so she's doing some analytics around those diverse suppliers. Share information with agency purchasing teams. Okay, so here are our diverse suppliers. Here are what they can do. Please utilize this list when you have contract opportunities, because we're really trying to grow our diversity spend. We're going to, and this person says they're going to follow up with the purchasing teams to create engagement plans for diverse suppliers. Okay, so great. Here's the list. Please use these suppliers. And then they're going to follow up to see if we're actually taking these actions seriously. So I think that's a good, solid plan. I don't see a whole lot of, the objectives. It could use a little bit more meat, but I do think with these action items, this supplier diversity practitioner can impact their mission. It might be a little questionable whether they can meet the 10%, the 6%, but I don't know. That really depends on what the existing suppliers offer and what kind of opportunities they have within the agency, but a very good, solid plan. And she utilizes all of the program, of the strategic format. So very good. Next one, this is an example of an actual supplier diversity plan, but a little bit different. Not a seasoned professional. This was a new startup plan, a new supplier diversity manager who seems like their organization really wasn't that particular about, how the plan was written. But when I read this, I did think they had a solid grasp on, what the objectives were, and also how to tackle the objectives to actually achieve the objectives. So let's take a look.
Ingrid, am I on the right slide, or do I need?
Oh, I'm sorry. Nope, you're not. You're on the next slide.
Thank you.
Okay. So yes, so this was the newbie. Like I said, his organization wasn't too particular about formatting, but I thought he did a very good job of thinking through his strategy. He had some very clearly defined objectives, and he thought through how his action items in terms of how he would meet his objectives. So let's take a look at objective one. So he wanted to create a communication and training. This is key. It's important for internal stakeholders to understand the business case and the community impact and how each employee can support these initiatives. So this is his idea of, I guess, somewhat of a communication strategy. I will host 4 lunch and learn sessions to ensure internal stakeholders understand the business case and the company supplier diversity program plan. So yes, if you're trying to communicate internally, so I think hosting lunch and learns and any kind of learning opportunity is a good approach. Did not necessarily follow the strategic plan format, but it's okay. I think he could certainly meet his objectives with this action items. Second objective wants to identify procurement opportunities to connect diverse suppliers and prepare diverse suppliers for the internal vetting process is how they're going to increase the number of suppliers that they utilize. Sounds good. So he's going to drive collaboration with procurement. It's going to set up a meeting cadence with category managers. That's a huge undertaking in a corporate environment to understand their requirements for the next 12 to 18 months. Very good. You want to know what opportunities are coming up that I may be able to include diverse suppliers. What is the organization going to be buying for the next 12 to 18 months? Because I am going to activate, I'm going to go out and actively source diverse suppliers so that I can interject them into these sourcing opportunities. So the supplier diversity team can perform strategic sourcing, very good, and prepare diverse suppliers. Wow, they're going to do some supplier development as a new program to compete for these opportunities, completing meetings by the end of second quarter. This is actually a very good objective and action item. And I believe that if this supplier diversity program manager follows through, they could very possibly achieve both of these objectives with these action items. Okay, and like I said before, there's no real standard format. If your company has a strategic plan format, then use it, but you could very well create one of your own. I'm going to go through one using all of the elements of a strategic plan, and I even have a one that we can share if anyone is interested in it. So let's go to the next slide. So here, as the MWBE coordinator for the organization that is under the CEO that sent out the directive, this is how my strategic plan will look like. And this is what I will share with my leadership. So let's go over it and look at how it's broken down, how we thought our goals and our action items through, and also how we're going to measure our success. So increase spend with MWEs by 20%, WEs by 10 across all affiliates, integrate the purchasing process and improve our external engagements with the community. So remember when I said you drop your overarching leadership goals down? This is where you're going to drop it down to in this goal column. And you're going to, the first one is to increase the spend, okay? So how am I going to do that? How is my, if it's not an individual action items, it could be in my department. If I have 2 or 3 people working with me in supplier diversity, how are we going to tackle that goal? So my idea is how I would tackle is I would identify all active MWE suppliers and validate spend accuracy. We would need to get a baseline and we would need to calculate that percentage. I think I mentioned that before. And we're going to, in addition, create that purchasing policy. Remember, we're going to be working with the purchasing organization. And I believe that strong strategy is backed by policy. I can pick up the phone and call, I can have webinars, but if I don't have, my activities aren't backed by organizational policy, I may not be a success in getting everyone on board. So you want to create that purchasing policy that actually says we're going to be inclusive in our purchasing practices. How I'm going to measure success? I'm going to increase diverse supplier participation in RFPs. I'm going to increase diverse suppliers winning contracts, hopefully, and securing projects. And when I say securing projects, oftentimes we think that large contracts is the only way to impact diversity spend. Sometimes it's those small one-offs. Sometimes it's those projects that can actually help to grow the spend. So don't always look at the top level of projects. Sometimes you can look, for that low-hanging fruit. What are we looking for to do? Is there an event that we can use an event planner? Is there any opportunity to use caterers? Is there any opportunities to use any supplier, a diverse supplier for these one-off projects? So don't always think big, because small spend can grow if you use diverse suppliers in multiple small projects. And we're going to increase that WBE spend. So that checks the box for our first goal from our CEO. We have laid out how we're going to, what we're going to do, our action items, and how we're going to measure. So the second action item, or second piece of strategy, he wants us to integrate diversity into purchasing, the purchasing process across organization. We mentioned before that is going to take, remember we had our ideation planning sheet, creating a communication cadence for our agency purchase. We want to get together, we want to create a policy and a way to train them. And we need to stay in constant communication with these interdependencies to make sure that we are all delivering, we're all in this together. So this person who is accountable for these action items really have to stand up as a leader, facilitate these meetings, facilitate this training, and do the follow-up with the other purchasing agents to make sure that they are delivering on those parts that they're able to deliver on. And again, our measures are going to be the same. We firmly believe that the work that we're doing in our action items are going to result in increase of MWBE spend. Okay, the last piece of strategy is to create the external engagement with the diverse communities. And we've kind of talked about that in our ideation, but I think we have some other things here. We're going to identify the local organizations to partner with. Who should we be engaging? Which organization out there can best help us to connect with that MWBE community? We want to identify opportunities for the local community. I mean, the MWBs love for you to show up, but they love for you to show up more when you have opportunities in hand to engage them for, when you have contract opportunities. So looking inside your organization and making sure you've identified some opportunities for them to contract and bid on. So, and you want to host some networking to really engage diverse community in a robust way. When you host an event and invite them in, maybe give them, some food and talk about the opportunities that are coming up in your organization, those are really value added engagements. And they're appreciated in the diverse business community. So engage them, the diverse community, in a very robust and authentic way. And there again, our measures are the same. We firmly believe that what we're doing here is going to result in an increase of spend. What we're doing here is going to result in better engagement with a diverse community. Okay. So one thing to keep in mind is the interdependencies. Like I said, no supplier diversity team is in, no supplier diversity person or program is an island. Really think along your strategic plan about your interdependencies, who can help, who do you need to engage. If it's a matter of creating a team and giving your team action items and move forward orders, then do that. You can really run yourself ragged in a supplier diversity program with all the moving parts if you don't have a strong support system. So even though they might not be part of your immediate supplier diversity team, there are people within your organization who, believe in the mission and who would certainly be willing to use their skills and talents to support. So build your advocacy group, build your little army, and make sure that they can help you with those action items. Okay, so I just included the supplier diversity plan. You're welcome to, copy that and take that format back to your organizations if you don't already have one. It's pretty straightforward document.
So Ingrid, I do have a few questions.
Okay.
I'm not sure how much more you have presentation wise, so we can do whatever is best.
You know what? Let's keep going.
Perfect.
And we can answer the questions toward the end.
Perfect.
Does that work? Okay. Mm-hmm. Because I do want to share, my team and I came up with some strategies to grow spend. I mean, everyone is clamoring, trying to get their programs to the next level. Everyone is feeling the pressure from diverse business communities. We want more, we want contracts, you need to engage us more robustly. So one of the things we came up with was to identify those current diverse suppliers and assess their capabilities and tests. That is always, like I said, always a starting point when you want to grow your spend. Identify categories for that single source supplier, that one-off job, and anything under the procurement threshold. In a corporate environment, sometimes there's a dollar amount, a threshold. Your organization might say, don't engage procurement professionals for anything under, let's say, $500,000, or your department leads have sign off potential for anything 100 and below. So don't engage procurement. Those can actually help you grow your spend, those engagements. It's not always those top tier organizations. So knowing what's going on in your organization on a departmental level can help you identify opportunities to engage diverse suppliers. So when I say single source supplier, I have an example. Sometimes organizations will have multiple suppliers in a particular category. When you're really looking at ways to grow your diverse spend, look at those categories. Lots of corporates have been doing exercises like decreasing vendors. That's a perfect opportunity to say, to source and try to find diverse suppliers, sometimes in office supplies, printing. I've been in organizations that have, 10 printers across the supply chain. So when we do these exercises to reduce the number of suppliers, we can identify some large scale diverse suppliers and maybe reduce that number down to 2. That's a great way to grow spend, that single source supplier, reducing your number of suppliers in a particular category and making sure that if you reduce to 1 or 2 are also diverse. Collaborating with purchasing to ensure diverse suppliers are included in the RFP. Well, that's a given. Even outside of the purchasing threshold, collaborating with department level staff and department level managers to make sure that diverse suppliers are considered. And in order to make that happen, Your strategy has to be communication. I was just in a training yesterday. I said, supplier diversity is not a sit at your desk role. You have to be out in the organization. You kind of have to be nosy to try to figure out, what are people buying? What are people doing? So if Department X is having a big party, who are you using for your party planning? Who are you using for your catering? Who are you using? So try to get out into your organization and figure out where that low hanging spin fruit is. It's not always the multi-million dollar contracts that can help you to grow your spend. Those little projects, those little events, they can actually contribute very well to your spend. Implement supplier diversity program to ensure those large suppliers are engaging diverse suppliers in second tier contracting. You see a lot of that in corporate manufacturing, also construction, where you have these very, very large contracts and very, very large dollar amounts of prime suppliers. You want to make sure that they have some subcontracting opportunities for diverse suppliers. I always say don't leave diverse spend on the table, and second tier is a way to make sure that you're capturing diverse spend. It's not just about spend, it really is about empowering those diverse communities and those making sure that small and diverse suppliers have a piece of the corporate pie. And also implementing a supplier development program to assist diverse suppliers to become more competitive. We hear all the time in the corporate arena, we can't find diverse suppliers to do what we need them to do. And my response is always, okay, well, let's develop them. One of the things that I did while at the Coca-Cola company was to create a supplier development program where we trained diverse suppliers to be better and be more competitive. And the way that we did that was we looked at diverse suppliers who had competed for contracts over the last year or two. And these were very viable, very capable, large scale diverse suppliers, but somewhere along that 7-step process, they kind of fell off. Sometimes it was price, sometimes it might have been capability. For whatever reason, they did not secure the contract. So what we did was looked at those highly skilled and highly capable diverse suppliers who, if the requirement of the contract was, 7 items and they might have had 5 or 6, we brought those suppliers into an 18-month development process, and we worked on their gaps for that period of time. And how we worked on those gaps was to put together a team, the business unit, finance team, to help them with their access to capital. We put together Q&A to help with quality, and a procurement person to really help them to grow their capabilities based on specifically on that contract that they would be competing for. So when we developed them over that 18-month period of time, the next time that contract came around, they were more competitive and contract ready. So implementing a supplier development program is a way to make sure that you grow your number of diverse suppliers and grow your spend. I'm a strong advocate of supplier development. So we can go on down to the next. That's just another one of my little quotes. Everything can and should be improved. Look at the opportunity. So I wanted to point out that supplier diversity, it really is about program management. And I think the best approach to program management is to learn a little bit about how program management work. When we talked about current state, looking at where you are and looking at your future state, that really was an intro to beginner program management. It talks about looking at gaps, where you are, where you want to be, and building strategy to close in that gaps. And that's what we want to do when we look at growing our supplier diversity program. So if you look at the 4 buckets, the components that we put together, you need to have strategic plans for each one of these buckets, program implementation, program management for each of these buckets, change management and training for each of these buckets. And you need to constantly be looking at what you're doing and thinking about how you can improve what you've done. What have we done today that we can improve tomorrow? Um, im- im- Implement this program management methodology because it forces you to be honest. Are we doing this well? How can we improve this that we're doing? Look at the various action items and be real honest about, your impact. And also this will help you to create your strategy, how to improve what it is you're doing. Okay, I'm not sure of the time. We're going to look at the session takeaways, the things that I really think are important for you to understand about this session. Your supplier diversity strategic plan must be aligned with your organization's goals, objectives, and priorities. They have to be aligned with your leadership strategic plan. And that's all about getting it away from program to strategy. The supplier diversity plan must indicate how supplier diversity supports those objectives. How will you support your leadership objectives? Detail the action items that you and your team will commit to ensure you meet those objectives. And I'm very big on continuous improvement. I always say assess, review, improve, and assess again. What can I improve? How can I be more efficient? What can I do to increase the number of diverse suppliers that we utilize? What are the opportunities for diverse suppliers? And what can I do to help diverse suppliers to be more successful? So we need to move from program to strategy. We need to understand our leadership priorities, and we need to engage leadership and get them on board and get their support. And supplier diversity doesn't need to be seen as outside of the priority bubble. It really needs to be an inside of the organization priority strategic initiative. Okay, so now we have some Q&A space.
Okay, great, because we have some questions. So,
okay, good.
Let me see here. So our first question is, tell us about your experience building a supplier diversity program at a large corporation.
Oh, wow. Okay.
How important was leadership in accomplishing your strategic plan, as well as cross-functional support?
Oh, wow. Very important. So, as a supplier diversity consultant, that's mainly what we do. We go into organizations that do not have supplier diversity programs and we build their strategic plan. And one of the things that we do first before we even write a single word on a piece of paper is we interview leadership. It's very important to understand leadership priorities and understand a little bit about the corporate culture. So yes, having leadership on board, if we don't really get a feeling from leadership that they're completely behind this, it kind of gives you a direction to go. So, okay, well, they could probably manage with this kind of program. But we have interviewed leaders who said, no, we want to set goals. I mean, they go from 0 to 100 just in one conversation. So their commitment can vary, but yes, it's all about taking the lead from leadership. And once
so did you find that at when you were at Coca-Cola, when you were building that plan? For
You
the,
know, Coca-Cola, when I was there, the 20 years I was there, always had, you know, a number of leadership changes. And one leader would come in and yes, he would be very committed and we would have all the resources that we would need. And then in four years or so, you know, we would have a leadership change and not so much. So the actual supplier diversity leader, I worked mainly under Miss Johnny Booker, who was a passionate and very strong supplier diversity leader. We remain consistent in our work, but that really depended on, you know, having a supplier diversity leader who could maneuver into those leadership ranks and you know, communicate with them on a high level and make sure that they understood that supplier diversity had value within that corporate environment.
okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Our next question is, what particular private sector resources would you recommend to public supplier diversity professionals?
Private sector research, we're seeing it more and more. I mean, everyone is kind of have resource restrictions. So we're seeing partnerships more and more with private sector, NMSDC and the SBA, and they've been having, you know, some conferences and some info sessions together, particularly around the PPP and those things that were going on. So yes, pulling from those resources, partnering, combining resources, it really is a way to get things done without impacting your resources as much.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Another question, if someone is interested in working on the private side from the public side, what pivot strategies would you recommend? So if they're interested in going from private to public.
I think if you have the skill
From public
set,
to private.
yeah, if you have the skill sets, you've managed a supplier diversity program, you can show where you accomplished some targets, and you were able to make some impacts in your particular organization. I would think that the transition would be pretty smooth, particularly now in this social environment. If you look out on LinkedIn, there's, you know, probably 50 supplier diversity positions out there. So this is a great time to pivot to private, because I think there's more positions than you have applicants at this point.
Gotcha. Okay. And then would you talk some more about the partnership of procurement and supplier diversity?
Wow, yes, the partnership.
Why understanding the procurement plan is valuable.
Yes, absolutely. Procurement is probably your best friend in a corporate environment. They can actually make or break your program. So when I mentioned earlier the 7-step procurement process, you want to make sure that you're aligned with procurement, because that's where the purchasing decisions are being made. So for supplier diversity to have a seat at the table early in the process, when the categories are being assessed, long before the RFP hit the street, supplier diversity should be engaged. Building those strong relationships with procurement can help catapult your spend to, you know, phenomenal levels. Or if you're outside of, you know, the procurement relationship bubble, you could be missing a lot of opportunities. So, and it doesn't always take, you know, in-the-face relationship, just a quick email. Hi, Bob, what's coming down the pike in your category? What will you be sourcing for, you know, the next year or so? What's your big projects? You know, just try to stay linked in. That's the main thing. But yes, procurement is absolutely key to the success of a supply diversity program.
Thank you. I don't know if there are others. I'm going to go to your contact slide, Ingrid. So anyone who would like to have Ingrid's contact information information. Here it is. She has a lovely website. Go and poke around and see what you can find there, and then certainly feel free to email her. We are going to upload this presentation into the documents section on the Whova app. I'm going to stop sharing here.
Yes, please. Anyone who have any particular challenges, I'm certainly here to help, and we can talk through and come up with solutions. Strategic plans really are roadmaps to help you to create a robust presence in your organization, and a well-written strategic plan. I just can't tell you the value.
So I'm seeing a message that there are some questions in the chat. I'm trying to scroll through to see here. Bear with me just a second. Okay. All right. I don't see any open questions here, but I think there might be some in the Whova app.
Oh, okay.
We have just a couple of minutes, so let me see if I can.
Yeah, sure. We're fine on time.
And then we'll get, here's one that just came into the chat while I'm looking in the app. Should you identify your advocate in each agency to make sure you have buy-in for your strategic plan?
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, rally the troops. I call them interdependencies. Whoever you feel can support your initiative within your organization, yes, reach out and build those strong advocate relationships. Like I said, you can't do it alone. It's just too much. You saw that 4 components, and each of those components have a long list up under that. Yeah, so build your advocates, because they need to be out in the organization advocating for you and for your success.
Thank you. Another one here from the app. How can we still move forward without a good data tool?
A good data tool.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, when I'm consulting with it depends on how large your agency is and how much you're spending. When I'm consulting startup organizations, I don't recommend the pricey data tool. If we can get an analyst from, accounting or finance who can help us pull that spend data and help do some analysis and help do some pivot tables, you don't really need a big pricey spend tool. Even for second tier, if you're just starting out and you only have 5 to 10 prime suppliers, that type of spend can be collected on a spreadsheet. We just created one yesterday for a client. So don't think that you need all these pricey bells and whistles. Think simplicity, because everyone's watching the dollars right now. So if you can get together with someone who in your organization really knows the data, and to be able to present the reporting the way you need it, with all of the categories, the women, the diverse categories, the spend, what the procurement categories are, that's all you need. You can pivot and find the answer to any data challenge that you have.
Excellent. Another question, can you suggest some key value drivers for a successful program?
Key value drivers. For a successful program. Honestly, I think engagement is everything. If you don't engage the diverse supplier community in a robust way, if you don't dig deep into your organization and identify what procurement opportunities or contract opportunities there are, to me, that's just the basics of your program. You are the connector. You are to identify opportunities. You are to identify diverse suppliers, and you match make those two. If you're spending a lot of time with external relationship building, or if you're spending too much time with the data, you're not focusing on those linkages. Those linkages are the basis of your supplier diversity program.
Okay. And then who are the key individuals within an organization to gain buy-in and support of a supplier diversity strategic plan?
The key individuals.
So who would you recommend, like if I'm just starting out, who might be some key individuals that I might want to get buy-in from right away?
You definitely need your chief procurement officer, because he's going to rally those purchasing agents and those procurement people to dig deep into their opportunities. He is going to be the one, and he really should be the co-signer of the policy to say, we are going to engage diverse suppliers. We're going to utilize them in our procurement process. So yes, the chief procurement officer. I've even seen your chief marketing officer in corporates, because they're out in a competitive arena with their corporate competitors, and supplier diversity is sometimes the marketplace advantage. Like when Pepsi is competing against Coke for, let's say, a university contract, that university is going to have diversity language. So having linkages to business development and sales is what supplier diversity brings value to the organization.
Okay. And with that, I think we'll have to close. Ingrid, thank you. Thank you.
This has been fun, and I hope everyone enjoyed the rest of their professional development conference. This is great.
Well, if you can join us again at some point tomorrow, feel free to log in. We sent you the information.
Yes. I do plan to. Thank you.
I want all the attendees to know that we are going to make this presentation available through the Hoover app. I think I said that a few minutes ago. I just want to reinforce that. And Ingrid, we just thank you so much for spending time with us in our conference. And
feel free to reach out. I'm here to help.
Thank you.
I want to see all of you be very successful in your programs.
Thank you. And we hope you will be able to join us again.
I will. Thank you.
We are going to take a quick break and come back at 4:10 for our final session of the afternoon. I hope you all will be able to join us for one very wonderful conversation about moving the needle for economic inclusion. We've got a great group of panelists that are going to join us this afternoon. So we look forward to seeing you all again in a few minutes. Thank you.